Nagumo is an ugly loser who is left to die after his friends betray him. To survive, he eats monsters and joins forces with a sexy vampire to gain overpowered skills, which aid him in getting his revenge. All of this begins with Nagumo lying on the floor in the dungeon, trying to figure out if he is dead or alive. He assures himself he is still alive and remembers how he has fallen into deep shit by entering the Great Orcus Labyrinth. Immediately, he stands up and decides to make his way to the upper levels to get home safely. Shortly after, he sees a bunny. He wonders how such a cute creature ended up in the dungeon. Suddenly, he witnesses the bunny defeating two huge wolves trying to eat it. Nagumo decides to leave, but as the bunny sees him, it moves closer to him in 8K, leaving him scared. He wets his pants when he sees the huge monster behind him. He watches in horror as the enormous Bigfoot-like creature tears the little bunny apart and begins to eat it. Nagumo screams and starts to run for his life. But his happiness is short-lived as the massive monster uses its skills to cut off his left arm. The monster picks up Nagumo's arm and begins to eat it. Afterward, the monster starts chasing him to get a taste of his delicious body. Nagumo quickly uses his transmute skills to escape the monster, inadvertently leading him deeper into the dungeon. Nagumo thinks he is out of danger, but realizes his left arm won't stop bleeding, causing him to pass out. When he wakes up, he sees a holy crystal above him. Despite his arm still hurting, his major problem is hunger. He recalls everything he read about the formation of the holy crystal. He also remembers his inability to fight. As he recalls the monster that devoured his arm, he begins to cry, lamenting his failure to battle and defeat the creature so he can safely return home. Nagumo experiences a flashback from when he and his classmates entered the dungeon. A monster nearly ate him, but Amanagawa saved him. Hiyama, one of his classmates, comes to mock Nagumo, but Kaori, who may have a slight crush on Nagumo, asks if he is okay. The group then discovers a shiny crystal, which the group's leader, Captain Meld, identifies as the Glance Crystal. When dumbhead Hiyama touches the crystal despite the captain's warnings, it teleports them back to the 65th floor of the labyrinth. The group realizes that they are f***ed up as they are now faced with a large number of monsters. Seeing this, Captain Meld advises them to hold back and avoid showing off their skills, as they are no match for the monsters. Captain Meld desperately tries to protect the other group members, but he's about as effective as a chocolate teapot. A monstrous creature tries to attack the group, and Nagumo, thinking he's suddenly become Superman, leaps into action to save his crushed Kaori from a massive boulder using his skills. He then tells Captain Meld to get Kaori to safety. Nagumo admits he won't be able to fend off the monster for long, but Captain Meld plays along and promises to save him once they're all out of danger. He gets Kaori to safety and then rallies the rest of the group to use their mad skills to rescue Nagumo. However, Nagumo recalls that as he tried to run to safety, one of the blasts from the members of his group suddenly hit him, causing him to fall deep into the labyrinth. After his flashbacks, Nagumo starts crying and questions whose fault it is that he's stuck in this mess. Kaori mentioned having nightmares before they went into the labyrinth and promised to protect him. But now, as he ponders the betrayal, he's also feeling the pain from his chewed-off arm and his growling stomach. Hangry and desperate, Nagumo decides to go monster wolf hunting. After eating the raw meat, things start getting weird. Suddenly, he feels like the meat is eating him from the inside. Then, while chilling under a massive holy crystal, Nagumo collapses in agony after his last supper. Desperate for relief, he takes a swig of the crystal's water, and unbeknownst to him, his hair is turning white as he does.
Oh shit, here we go again.
A few hours pass, and Nagumo starts feeling better. He notices his hair and decides to check out his status plate. Turns out, he's gained some new skills from the monster he munched on. He uses his newly acquired lightning skills to fry the rest of the monster's meat to eat it. Then, he goes full mad scientist and crafts a revolver from a hardcore rock called the Torstone. He also makes some bullets using the resources from the labyrinth. Nagumo names the gun Donner and tests it by taking down a monster bunny, gaining its powers after eating it. Next up, he heads to the monster that devoured his arm. After a little show-off of his new skills, he literally chews the monster's arm in front of its face. As the monster tries to retaliate, Nagumo's like, nope, and shoots it down without breaking a sweat. Feeling pumped, he decides it's time to head back home and takes out anything that stands in his way. Nagumo returns the monster meat to his safe spot and starts chowing down. He realizes he's not gaining any new skills, but at least he's racking up points like crazy. He decides to try finding his way home, even though he has no clue which floor he's on. He's casually strolling through another part of the labyrinth when, out of nowhere, he faces a monster that uses its skill to snuff out his light. Nagumo immediately returns to the holy crystal as he cannot find anything. Nagumo is journeying deeper into the bottom of the abyss, splattering monsters left and right like it's nobody's business. Yet, when he checks his stats at the holy crystal, he realizes that they haven't increased one bit. Meanwhile, as the rest of the group reports back to the king and explains what had happened in the labyrinth, the king gives them a strict order not to let a word slip about one of them going missing in the labyrinth. Shizuku, the mean queen of Nagumo's crew, starts thinking about the time they tried to save him. She feels terrible and checks on Kaori, who's out cold because they couldn't protect Nagumo. Shizuku also remembers their mission to save the kingdom and their teacher, Miss Eiko, begging them not to go to the labyrinth. Shizuku wonders what went wrong but gets totally distracted when she sees Hiyama talking to himself like a madman. He's trying to calm down because no one saw what he did. Shizuku calls Hiyama and he freaks out, claiming everything is fine. But once he's gone, Shizuku realizes he's always fighting with Nagumo. She figures out that he's into Kaori and was using magic on Nagumo because of it. Shizuku then assures herself that Hiyama did not hurt Nagumo and heads over to where Kaori is out cold. She gets all hyped when she sees Kaori waking up. Kaori says she's tired, and Shizuku tells her she's been out for 5 days. Kaori is clueless about what's happened and distraught to hear they lost Nagumo. Shizuku tries to console her, but Kaori's on a mission to save Nagumo, who's all alone. Meanwhile, Nagumo is still doing his experiments, and he finds a big door with 2 giant statues. He decides to make more bullets, thinking he doesn't know what's behind the door, but he's ready to kill anything in his way. Nagumo tries to use his transmute skill on the door, but gets zapped and falls down. Then he realizes the statues are actually huge one-eyed monsters guarding the door, and he starts questioning his life choices. One monster tries to attack Nagumo, but he gives the monster a dose of Donner's powers, and it drops dead. The second monster pulls off some defensive magic moves against Nagumo, making him even more curious about what's hiding behind that mysterious door. After some back and forth, Nagumo is able to use his skills to trick the monster into a corner and isekais it with style, feeling like a total superhero. Meanwhile, Kaori is spinning a wild tale to Shizuku about how she's absolutely sure that Nagumo is still alive. She's on some mission to become stronger so she can swoop in and save him. Now, she's asking Shizuku to help her bulk up, and Shizuku reluctantly agrees to be her personal trainer. In the dungeon, Nagumo figures out the door's key is the pair of orbs from the monster's chests. He grabs the orbs, the door opens, and Nagumo finds himself in a dazzling room with a massive shiny cube floating in the air. But as he ventures further into the room, a voice urges him to get closer to the cube. When he does, he discovers there's someone inside the cube. As he gets closer, he sees that the person is a young girl, but he decides to bail because he doesn't want to deal with whatever she's got going on. The girl pleads with him to stay and help her, but he tells her he's not interested in being her knight in shining armor because she probably got herself locked up on purpose. The girl quickly insists that she's been betrayed, and when Nagumo hears that, he feels like they might have something in common and decides to hear her out. Nagumo questions the girl about why she's stuck in a cube. Before she can answer, she's totally mesmerized by his BTS-like charm. She explains she comes from a long line of super powerful vampires, but her no-good uncle double-crossed her. He wanted to take over, but he sealed her away deep in the labyrinth when he realized she couldn't be killed. Nagumo keeps grilling the girl to find out why she's unkillable. She explains that she heals super fast and can control mana without a magic circle. Nagumo's pretty impressed and decides to lend a hand, secretly hoping she will lend him a hand later too. He uses his powers to break the seal on a huge cube, and after applying lots of pressure and energy, the girl ends up falling out of it, naked. Nagumo offers her his holy water, but instead of being grateful, she latches onto him like they're a couple. She thanks him for saving her life and asks for his name. He tells her his name, and when he asks for hers, she tells him to give her a new name as she does not want to use the old one she had before. After thinking for a while, Nagumo names the girl Yu and tells her it means the moon because her hair and eyes remind him of the moon. Yu thanks Nagumo and hugs him by rubbing her bare body against him. But Nagumo suddenly senses an attack. He uses himself as a human shield for you, and she calls out to him when she sees that some rock spears have hit him. Nagumo tells you that he's totally let his guard down and quickly splashes crystal water on his wounds while Yu helps him yank out the spears. As he looks up, he spots a massive crab-like monster and warns Yu that it's there to ensure she can't escape her imprisonment. Then, Nagumo looks at Yu, and for the first time, he realizes she is naked. Nagumo gives her one of his coats to wear, and she calls him an uncultured swine. Nagumo then shuts her yapping mouth by shoving his sausage inside it.
Spicy meat. Yeah, boy.
After that, Nagumo tells Yu to hop on his back and faces the monster, threatening to kill and eat its meat. With Yu on his back, Nagumo starts attacking the huge crab monster with his skills, but soon realizes he can't pierce through its skin. He retreats to a safe space to come up with a new plan. Suddenly, Yu hops off his back and, without warning, starts biting his neck and sucking his blood like a juice box. Nagumo keeps using his skills to lead them away from the monsters. When Yu finishes sucking, she tells him that his blood is delicious. Then, she boldly steps up to the monster and unleashes a high-level magic called the Azure Blade. Nagumo is dumbfounded and asks if she can do it again. She says she'll give it a shot. Nagumo comes up with a plan and instructs her to use the magic again when he gives the signal. His plan seems to work, as they easily defeat the giant Mr. Krabs. Afterward, they cook it up. Looks like Nagumo finally gets to taste the secret formula.
You better cough up that secret formula or else!
The next morning, the two continue their journey. They walk for days, and when they reach the 100th level, Yu notices Nagumo being extra careful. She asks him why, and he replies that it's the 100th level, and they have no idea what's in store. Soon, they come across a door that looks like it will lead to either death or paradise. Nagumo warns Yu to stay alert because they have no clue what's behind it. They walk through the door, and both agree that they're in the Maverick's lair because of how beautiful it is constructed. But Yu jumps the gun and tells Nagumo they'll take on any monster they encounter. Yu jinxes it, and suddenly, they're face to face with a level boss, a six-headed, multicolored monster. They start feeling like superheroes as the monster attacks, and they bust out their skills to take it down. But after they land some hits, they realize the monster can heal itself. They also figure out that the heads are in charge of different combat skills like defending, attacking, and healing, among other skills. They keep fighting, and as Yu tries to take down the monster, one of its heads tricks her into looking at its eyes. When she does, she sees herself trapped in the cube again. But this time, Nagumo just leaves her there, and she starts crying. Nagumo hears Yu's voice and sees the monster trying to finish her off with its skills. He dashes to rescue her and then distracts the monster by chucking a grenade at it. Nagumo builds a rock wall to shield them from the monster's attacks. When he sees Yu has passed out, he gives her some holy water, and she wakes up. She starts blabbering about how she thought he'd bail on her, but he assures her they'll both survive the labyrinth and go home. Nagumo looks at how cute Yu is and gives her mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, shocking her with an unexpected kiss. After sharing some salute fluid with Yu, Nagumo turns into a motivational speaker and starts pumping up Yu to take down the monster and get back home. They go back to fighting the monsters, but then the monster tries to play mind games with Yu, trying to trick her with her past. Thankfully, she remembers the kiss with Nagumo and snaps out of it. Just then, Nagumo unleashes his most powerful skill on the monster, deep frying it. He then realizes how completely wiped out Yu is and sees the monster gearing up to attack her. Knowing he's about to be roasted, he rushes in to rescue her from the monster's smackdown. Nagumo passes out, and Yu drags him to a safe spot away from the monster. She's totally freaking out because he's bleeding like crazy. She grabs the holy water, shoves it in her mouth, and then spits it into his.
Oh my god! Wow!
When she realizes he's still out cold, she becomes determined to save him because he has been looking out for her since he rescued her. She grabs Donner and decides to take on the monster solo. As she clashes with the monster that reeks of death, she throws everything she's got at it, but it turns out the monster is a total powerhouse, and she's struggling to keep up all by herself. The monster smacks her, and she plops down, exhausted. She starts saying her goodbyes to Nagumo, begging for forgiveness because she can't save the day by beating the monster. Out of the blue, Nagumo wakes up like he's got some kind of spider sense and jumps back into the fight with the monster. He pulls off some crazy move he came up with while out cold and manages to take down the monster all by himself. All because he got fired up hearing you cry about not being able to beat the monster for him. After kicking the monster's ass, Nagumo collapses and tells you that he's totally wiped out from fighting the beast. She pats his back and praises him for a job well done. He mumbles something about her doing pretty well, too. Then, they just flop down to rest for a while before continuing their journey. On the other hand, Lady Eiko, the teacher at Nagumo's school, goes to meet the man who called them. She begins to rant at him for sending the students to the labyrinth after seeing one of their classmates dead. She explains to him that the students need time to grieve over their loss. Then she tells him she will not work on their farms again if he does not listen to her. Hearing this, the man assures her that no student will be pushed into fighting if they don't want to. This calms Lady Eiko down, and she thanks him before leaving. She's determined to look out for her students' well-being above all else. Meanwhile, the students head back to the labyrinth, and Kaori sees the spot where Nagumo bit the dust. Shizuki approaches her to offer some cheer, assuring her he's alright. Amanagawa steps in, advising Kaori not to let her classmate's death drag her down. Iri and Suzu, two other girls, attempt to console Kaori and pledge their friendship. Kaori thanks them for their support, and then Amanagawa pushes for the gang to continue their adventure. Nagumo suddenly wakes up and finds himself on a bed in a beautiful place, covered with pristine white sheets. To his horror, he's missing an eye, and he's completely naked. He notices you next to him, who is also in the same state, and his jaw drops. He frantically tries to shake her awake. Yu wakes up and gets all hyped when she sees he's alright. He quickly apologizes and tells her she must have been stressed. Nagumo asks Yu what went down after they took down the six-headed monster. She explains that the massive door opened up to the Maverick's lair. She gave him the holy water, and when it started doing its thing, she was so tired that she had to rest for a bit. He thanks her for helping him, but he sits up and questions her on why he is naked. She immediately tells him that they were both dirty, and she cleaned his body for him. Yu starts licking her lips as she talks about cleaning Nagumo's body, and he's wondering why she's acting like a hoe. They both start browsing through the clothes Yu found, and she also mentions finding an abandoned house. The two put on some clothes and wander around the mansion like clueless tourists. They stumble upon a fancy bath, and Nagumo pictures himself soaking alone, but then Yu suggests they bathe together, and he refuses, which makes her angry. As they snoop around the mansion, they discover some rooms locked up tight with magic that even Nagumo's transmute skills can't crack open. But they press on and hit the third floor, stumbling into a massive room with a fancy throne. On closer look, they spot a skeleton chillin' on the throne. It looks like this dude used to be a king or something. They notice a magic circle in the middle of the room, and Nagumo tells Yu that the man might have been waiting for someone. Then he tells Yu she better have his back if things get messy because he's sure this room is the key to finding their way out. Without hesitation, Nagumo steps into the circle, and boom, it becomes activated. Nagumo starts feeling super weird, like his brain's getting microwaved, but then he sees a ghostly message from the dead man. The guy starts blabbing about being the mastermind behind the insane labyrinth, and he wants to share the reasons why everyone thinks he's trying to destroy the world. Meanwhile, in the labyrinth, the students and guards reach a new floor and face the behemoth, the same monster that caused them to lose Nagumo. Despite their shock at the sight of the huge monster, they all agree to take it on and defeat it once and for all. On Amanagawa's command, the students start acting like the coolest heroes ever, giving it their all to take down the giant monster and its spooky skeleton sidekicks. After a bunch of planning and some serious determination, they finally manage to defeat the monster. The students are all hyped up because they worked together to beat the huge monster, but then Kaori starts feeling bad for letting Nagumo down, literally. On the other hand, the dead man introduces himself as Orcus. He offers Nagumo his power of creation, but also warns him not to misuse it. After watching the recording, Nagumo starts feeling strange and tells you that it's as if something has been tattooed into his brain. He also mentions that the people they thought were villains are actually the good guys, they're the liberators. Nagumo assures you that he'll make sure she gets home. She agrees to start getting ready to leave, but he also tells her about a new ancient magic of creation he obtained from Orcus. He advises her to focus on learning and training more before they return to the surface. Nagumo suggests to Yu that they should deal with the dead body since the mansion now belongs to them. They decide to bury Orcus in the fields. After returning inside, they head to the library to figure out how to get to the surface. They stumble upon a particular book and realize that the magic circle in Orcus' room is the only way to the surface. But the key they need is Orcus' ring. Yu is feeling down because they just buried the man. But then Nagumo reveals that he took the ring before they buried the body. Using Orcus's ring, they unlock a sealed room and find various relics and artifacts left behind by Orcus. Nagumo suggests they kick it in the mansion for a bit to gear up before heading back to the surface. Later that night, Nagumo takes a bath. While enjoying his me time, Yu unexpectedly enters the bath completely naked. Shocked, he asks her why she did not cover her body, and she begins to ask if she is not his type. As he tries to explain himself to her, she immediately stands in front of him and shows him her tiny-looking melons and her floodgate. Nagumo becomes uncomfortable, and he begins to scream for help. But she shuts his stupid mouth up by making him suck on some petite melons.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
A few days later, Nagumo creates an iron arm for himself, and Yu helps him get a pirate's eye patch for his missing eye. They also find some sweet rides in the house, like motorbikes and cars. After 2 months of preparation, they decide to head to the surface. Before they leave, Nagumo gives Yu a beautiful ring he made for her, and she accepts it. He goes all dramatic about how ready they are to go to the surface and get home. However, Nagumo warns Yu about potential threats on the surface due to his newfound powers. He also mentions the possibility of being targeted by godly beings, but then he goes all motivational, reciting their anthem of defeating anything, or anyone who stands in their way of getting home. Meanwhile, a young and beautiful beast girl is waiting for visitors in a deserted place. Suddenly, she spots a huge, two-headed dinosaur monster. She's scared and shaking, but then her massive cannons start to shake too. Just as she's about to lose it, she sees a massive magic circle and gets all excited, yelling that her visitors have finally arrived. The bunny girl is totally shaken as she spots Nagumo and Yu, who seem to have no clue about their special visitor status. After defeating the monster that was chasing her, she decides to walk over and chat with them. Nagumo and Yu are super hyped on their adventure until they spot the bunny girl charging towards them. The stupid bunny girl cannot catch up with them as they walk away like some important people. The bunny girl clings onto Nagumo's leg, yammering about saving her family. However, Nagumo just keeps walking, while Yu can't stop complaining about how irritating she finds her. However, the girl keeps insisting that they help her, but Yu starts pulling her ears and eventually pulls her off Nagumo's body. The bunny girl then tells Nagumo not to turn down a beautiful girl like her but to help her. Nagumo responds by telling her to stop complimenting herself because he doesn't find her attractive at all. She desperately pleads for Nagumo's help, but he's not having any of it and just shoves her away. The bunny girl then introduces herself as she and reveals that she's the oldest daughter of the Halia Beast tribe. She urgently explains that her entire tribe is in deep trouble. Nagumo gets fed up and tries to scare She with his gun. Eventually, he agrees to listen to her. When She gets emotional and wipes her tears on Nagumo's coat, he loses it and tells her off. In a fit of rage, he then hits She, who responds by asking him why he's hitting her despite her beauty. Nagumo tells She to stop bragging about her looks in front of Yu, who's way more stunning and out of her league. Yu looks confident, like a queen, as She points out to Nagumo that she has something Yu doesn't: giant cannons and a very detailed body. She flaunts her body in front of Nagumo, who's feeling super awkward and tries to turn away. She's totally clueless and keeps asking him why he's blushing. Little does she know, the tiny melon Yu is standing behind her, fuming with anger. At that moment, She sees Yu and realizes she f***ed up. She desperately asks for forgiveness, but Yu is not having it. She starts yelling for help, pleading not to be turned into a pancake. After a few minutes, Nagumo hears She's story about her banished tribe and her ability to predict the future. She claims they're destined to help her, but Nagumo isn't buying it. He uses his magic ring to reveal a motorbike that will take him and Yu to their next stop. She starts begging Nagumo, but he tells her he's not getting anything in return and doesn't want to stress himself. She immediately reveals that she knows he is going to the Great Tree of Holtzina, a great sea of trees. She adds that the place is always covered by thick fog that cannot be seen through by a visitor, but can be seen through by a member of her race. She wants to tag along with them if they agree to help her, and Yu suggests bringing her along as a guide. She gets super excited and jumps to hug Yu, but she turns her into a yummy ice cream. In the village, Nagumo takes down a big flying beast that is attacking a kid. When she reunites with her people, she tells them she went for help, but Nagumo says he's thinking of using her as bait for the beasts. Nagumo grabs Shi and tosses her in the air to attract the flying beasts while he takes care of them with his trusty sidekick, Donner. Nagumo and Yu assist Shi and her people in battling the troublesome monsters. She reveals why they left their hometown. She was fated to be killed by one of the beast men. To safeguard her, her parents and some other Halia residents left their hometown to settle elsewhere. Nagumo and Yu are helping Shi and other beast men to avoid getting hunted. Later that night, the people of Halia can finally sleep peacefully, which surprises Shi. After thanking Nagumo and Yu, Shi asks about the purpose of their journey. Nagumo explains that they are planning to go home. After thinking for a while, she decides she wants to tag along on their journey home. But Nagumo and Yu believe she'll just slow them down. The next day, Shi and her people approach Nagumo and Yu, expressing their desire to become stronger. Meanwhile, Yu agrees to have a duel with Shi to decide if she can follow them, while Nagumo talks to the others about dealing with the monsters hunting them. After a few minutes of fighting, Yu defeats Shi. However, Shi notices a scratch on Yu's cheek and points it out. Yu immediately heals herself and denies getting hit by Shi's attacks. Nagumo approaches the girls and asks if their duel is finished. Excitedly, Shi goes to meet him and tells him about the scratch. Nagumo asks Yu for her opinion of Shi, and Yu responds that Shi is strong. Shi then urges Nagumo to join them on their journey. When Nagumo asks why she wants to follow them, Shi confesses that she is in love with him and wants to be with him. The Halia tribe follows Nagumo and Yu to the Sea of Trees. When they see the Tree of Halsana, Nagumo reads out a message and puts Orcus ring on it. They realize that to open the tree, they have to get relics from the other labyrinths as well. Nagumo then tells the people that he has to leave, but they ask to follow him. He tells them they should continue training as he might need them later. Later that night, Shi reminds Yu of their bet. Yu immediately meets Nagumo to convince him to allow Shi to follow them on their journey, and Nagumo accepts. He tells Shi that he would not reciprocate any feelings towards her. She expresses her feelings about working hard and changing the future, explaining that she had regrets in the past and does not want to go through that anymore. Nagumo warns Shi that it would be complicated and dangerous for her to live in his hometown. Shi insists that she is up to the task. He keeps quiet. Shi tells him that her feelings have won against his hard heart. Nagumo and Yu search for the entrance to the labyrinth in the Risen Gorge when they suddenly discover something. As they investigate, they hear a voice welcoming them, and Nagumo wonders where the voice is coming from. Although they don't seem to care much about the source of the voice, they are more excited that they have found the entrance to the labyrinth. Nagumo asks Yu for her opinion about the entrance, and they search for a way to enter the labyrinth. Suddenly, Shi finds an entrance but accidentally falls, exposing her underwear. After they enter the labyrinth, they hear the voice again and wonder what it is. They then attempt to destroy the stone tablet, thinking that the voice will cease. But the voice informs them that the stone tablets can regenerate after a while, which surprises them. While entering the labyrinth, Nagumo accidentally steps on a trap. This triggers an obstruction, blocking their escape route and causing large stones to roll toward them. Yu attempts to use her projectile magic, but is disappointed to find that her magic doesn't work inside the building. Nagumo then tries to use his gun to destroy the stones successfully. To their surprise, they notice that more stones are coming towards them, but she immediately uses her hammer to stop the remaining balls like a superhero waiting to be applauded. They advance and notice more traps like that, but the girl uses her hammer to continue to pave the way for them so that they can pass. They continue further into the labyrinth and come back to a room that they have seen before. Nagumo then sees that they have been going in circles, as they have been in that room from the beginning, making them angry at Mildy, the voice that has been talking to them. In the town, away from the labyrinth, Yuka feels worried about sitting around and not doing anything. She plans to go on her expedition with Eiko. They try to convince her to calm down, but she tells them that she can't just sit down doing nothing like a lazy bone and has to do something. Yuka explains that she felt terrible after Nagumo left to meet his ancestors, and she hasn't been able to do anything about it. They mention that she could go with him since Nagumo had met Hades while trying to save them. Yuka argues that he achieved that by saving them and leaves to at least keep Eiko safe. Back at the labyrinth, Nagumo and the others have just emerged from a door, and Nagumo sees they have arrived at Mildy's place. They notice a lot of giant statues there. Nagumo begins to look at them and tells the others that he has a bad feeling about the suits of armor and begins to feel threatened. Nagumo then urges Shi to go in, promising to protect her if anything happens. She listens, and they all start to attack the giants in armor suits. She sees that she is being attacked by many giants, but she is saved by Yu, who informs her that carelessness will get her killed. Nagumo keeps firing his pistol at the giants, but there seems to be no end to their relentless attacks. Suddenly, they come across a door, and Nagumo urges everyone to jump through it to escape the giants. They find themselves landing on a box that takes them to Mildy, where her massive size confronts them and realizes they are about to face the boss.
It's about to go down.
Nagumo is surprised to see Mildy, as he had believed she was dead based on Orcus notes. Mildy, in turn, is surprised that they are the ones who made it to Orcus Labyrinth. Nagumo immediately shuts her up as he begins to feel like a boss himself, declaring that they have come to access ancient magic. Mildy insists that she is telling the truth about her identity and questions why they need the ancient magic. Nagumo explains that he needs to use the ancient magic to return home, as he was forcibly brought to where he is by her insane god. He tells her that he is looking for ancient magic that can allow him to jump between worlds. However, Mildy refuses to give him any information, prompting Nagumo to attack her. He instructs his team to destroy her core, which is essentially her heart. They launch a series of attacks on Mildy and question whether they are effective. They then devise another strategy to use against her. Mildy arrives and launches her attack on them. She asks if they can survive it, but then she sees the huge chaos she has caused and concludes that they cannot handle it. She becomes surprised when she hears Nagumo's voice behind her, realizing she has been tricked. She sees that they have managed to pierce through her armor despite her initial belief that Nagumo would be unable to. After they manage to bring her down, Yu traps her in an ice coffin, allowing Nagumo to plant a spear in her armor. Mildy laughs, thinking that was the end, not knowing that Nagumo still has a final move. He immediately orders Shi to use her hammer to hit the spear that is supposed to hit her core and kill her, making Mildy scream and shut down. Yu tells Shi to kneel for her, and she begins to pet her head since Nagumo will not. They start enjoying each other's company, but they notice that Mildy has used some of her power to communicate with them. They are puzzled because they destroyed her core. Mildy explains that she just wants to warn them and then bids them farewell as she departs from the robot's body, and they all begin to leave. They suddenly see her again in a canteen and become more annoyed, thinking they are done with her, but they see her in another form. Yu then orders Shi to attack her, and she uses her hammer to hit her on the head. Mildy immediately offers them gravity magic after the attack and specifies how they can use it. She immediately gets angry after seeing that Nagumo has taken more treasure from her and uses her powers to flood the room, wishing them luck in other labyrinths. Nagumo notices that Shi has passed out and quickly performs mouth-to-mouth resuscitation to try to save her. This makes Yu uneasy. Shi wakes up suddenly and kisses Nagumo, which makes him angry. He reacts by throwing Shi back into the river to drown. They finally reach an inn and get into a big argument about how many rooms they should get. Everyone wants to room with Nagumo, but Nagumo stays quiet and then hears Shi suggesting that he take her virginity. He stays silent for a moment, then pulls out his gun to shoot her. The following day, Nagumo meets Ilwer, who has been on the lookout for them after hearing rumors about a trio breezing through the Risen Gorge. Ilwer wastes no time and immediately assigns them a task, prompting Nagumo to sarcastically remark that he didn't expect anything less. While leaving, Yu notices that Shi is fast asleep and tries to figure out the reason for her recent silence. Nagumo reflects on the importance of the mission they received from Ilwer, which involves locating a missing person, which holds significant value for him. Nagumo lays down 2 conditions for helping Ilwer, making status plates and providing aid when needed. Ilwer agrees, and Nagumo is thrilled that he now has a powerful ally. Nagumo shares his plan with Yu, including a stop at the lake town of and a visit to a rice farm. He's looking forward to finally getting his hands on some rice after a long time. In the town of Eiko and the other residents work together to build an irrigation system for their crops. Once they are finished, they return to the inn to rest and eat before resuming work the next day. Eiko begins to worry about Shimizu, who has been missing for a week. When the townspeople ask her if she's thinking about Shimizu, she expresses her concern and they reassure her that he will return. The owner suddenly comes over to ask them how they are enjoying the food and informs them that they have used all their spices to prepare the food. They become more worried upon hearing this bad news and immediately begin to look for a solution. They also wonder why, and the owner informs them that a group of monsters has been blocking the farmers from taking the spices. He also tells them that some group of adventurers went there to try to stop the monsters, but they have not returned. Now, Ilwer has sent some more adventurers to come and help them. Suddenly, Nagumo and the two girls walk in and begin to argue. Eiko immediately recognizes his voice and goes to greet him. He tries to deceive her about his identity, but she tells him to stop lying and wonders what has happened to him. She holds him as he tries to leave. Yu tells Eiko to stop bothering him, but Eiko tells her to mind her own business as she is trying to talk to Nagumo. Yu tells Eiko to calm down, seeing that she has lost her composure. Eiko apologizes and begs Nagumo to tell her the truth. Nagumo admits to his identity, tries to order food, and is distracted by why they have come there. Eiko gets angry and hits the table to stop their conversation, and she asks him who the two girls are. They both introduce themselves, and she reveals that Nagumo kissed her, making Eiko angry and red all over.
Now, I'm really mad!
Nagumo attempts to explain that he only tried to save she after she nearly drowned, but Eiko tells him that his explanation is completely unacceptable. As they begin to eat, Eiko starts asking Nagumo a lot of questions and realizes that he isn't giving her proper answers. This frustrates her, and one of the knights with her suddenly jumps in and begins to threaten Nagumo and the girls he is with. However, Nagumo intervenes, telling the knight to stop, and uses his gun to shoot the armor of the knight. Nagumo continues to eat his food, and everyone begins to wonder why he is behaving in such an unusual manner. After finishing his meal, he states that he isn't ready to explain what has happened or what will happen. However, he warns that if anyone gets in his way, he will kill them. After chatting with Yu and Shi for a while, he begins to leave. Yuka tells Eiko and the others that she has never had a chance to thank him. Eiko yells out, telling him that she is not giving up on him. Later that night, Eiko is puzzled by Nagumo's sudden violence and wonders how he managed to enter her room. He explains that he needs to talk to her and unveils an ancient story about why he can't return with her. Nagumo tells Eiko that he must navigate a labyrinth to access its magic and find his way home. He also reveals that one of her students attempted to kill him by directing magic at him, causing him to fall into the labyrinth. Eiko is surprised by what Nagumo has said and starts to think about it. Nagumo begins to leave, but then he notices that Eiko and all her friends want to go with him. He tells them that they can't come along because they'll slow him down, but Eiko persuades him to let them follow, and he agrees. They are puzzled about how his bike can carry all of them, so he uses his ring to summon a car and tells them to either get in or ride in the trunk if there's no space. As Nagumo continues on his way to his destination, Eiko rests on his shoulders, and Yu starts to feel jealous. She tells him that on their way back, she will sit next to him. They arrive at their destination, and Nagumo releases some drone-like objects to help him with his search. He calls them Ornies, and he begins to see some part of the mountain, discovering something very disturbing. He goes to look at what they have seen and finds a huge footprint track, deducing that it has been caused by a large four-legged creature. As they advance up the mountain, they arrive at a waterfall. Nagumo tells them that he can sense someone behind the waterfall and immediately instructs Yu to part the water, amazing the rest of the rescue team with what she has done. They see a cave and go into it. Nagumo sees Will and tells him that the head of the Adventurers Guild has sent him to rescue him. Will begins to tell them about how they were attacked. He starts to feel bad, seeing that he got to live when everyone else died. Nagumo begins to tell him that he should be grateful that he is alive instead of feeling bad for what has happened. As they plan to head back, they unexpectedly confront the black dragon that Will had mentioned earlier. Nagumo steps in to defend the girls from its attack. Yu decides to support Nagumo with Shi's help to stop the monster from killing him while it has him pinned down. Together, they manage to bring the dragon down, thinking they have won. However, they soon realize that the dragon has emerged from the fog and is beginning to attack them again. They struggle to defend against its attacks. Nagumo immediately instructs Eiko to lead the others out of the dragon's reach to keep them safe and tells Yu to do the same. Yu then warns them that if they don't want to die, they should follow her. Nagumo starts battling the dragon alone and notices that the dragon is specifically targeting Will instead of him. He realizes that it's the first time a creature has ignored him. Nagumo tries to use his weapons to take down the dragon, but it's no use as the dragon appears to be very powerful. He immediately calls Shi for help, and she uses her hammer to strike the dragon's head in an attempt to make it pass out. Yu then brings a large sharp pole to Nagumo. Nagumo, who plans to kill the dragon, immediately forces the pole into the dragon's face, causing the dragon to wake up and speak. They are all surprised to hear the dragon's voice, and it begins to beg them to remove the pole from behind. They ask the dragon what it wants, but Nagumo continues to push the pole deeper into the dragon's backside, causing the dragon to make happy noises. The dragon pleads and promises to tell them everything they want to hear, revealing how she was manipulated by a man who spent a whole day casting a very powerful spell on her in order to control her and make her do his bidding. Will immediately expresses disbelief, but Yu insists that she is telling the truth and claims she can tell when someone is lying. She then tries to plead, feeling guilty for killing innocent people. Nagumo ignores her and attempts to drive the pole deeper into her backside, but he is stopped by Yu. She explains to him that she was being controlled and didn't know what she was doing. Nagumo ponders this, and the dragon tells him to remove the rod from her. When Nagumo asks why, she tells him to imagine himself as a woman with a thick rod stuck inside him from the rear. As Nagumo begins to remove the rod, she starts to make happy noises, and Nagumo becomes tired of it and removes it with his strength. She immediately goes back to her normal human form and introduces herself to them as Tio. She informs them that the man in the black hood intends to use the monsters to attack the town. Nagumo uses his abilities to see that a large number of monsters are heading towards the city. He decides to return to the city to warn them about the impending attack. Additionally, he notices that Tio is unable to move due to having no energy left, so he starts to pull her along. In response, Tio begins to scream in an annoying way at him. Seems like Tia is unable to resist to Nagumo's rod skills. Back in the town, Eiko begins to plead with him to help them out with the war that is about to happen in the town. Nagumo suddenly turns down their plea, feeling that all he was sent to do has been accomplished and wishing to go back to his plans. However, his teacher persists and insists that he do it for her. After much persuasion, he stands up with Shi and Yu and tells them that they have to start preparing for the attack. They start building many defenses around the town based on Nagumo's plan, and they all seem happy to do it. After a while, food is brought to them so that they can have strength while working. After a full day of work, Eiko goes to Nagumo to ask him if he still needs anything from her. He tells her that everything is okay and that he is waiting and anticipating their attack. Later that evening, Sonobe comes to see him to thank him for saving her life in the labyrinth. He tells her that it was a fluke, but she remains grateful and thanks him for his help. As she turns to leave, he calls her back and gives her friendly advice not to die, considering she might help him out in battle. She immediately takes her leave. He then notices that Tio has been spying on him and tells her to come out of hiding. She begins to disturb him with questions, causing him to get angry. Yu and Shi stare from afar and see how annoying Tio is. After much discussion, Nagumo starts to notice the monsters approaching and begins to put his plan into action. He addresses the citizens of to motivate them and help them overcome their fear. With the support of Yu, Tio, and Shi, they launch an attack on the monsters and start to eliminate them in large numbers. After some time, Tio suddenly becomes exhausted and notices that the ring has vanished from her finger. She informs Nagumo, and he tells her to rest as they will handle it. Nagumo suddenly realizes he is out of bullets and immediately informs Yu to focus her attacks on the bigger monsters so he can concentrate on the smaller ones. He quickly takes his bike and, together with Shi, goes to confront the monsters. Nagumo begins to use his pistol to take them out one by one, while Shi goes to attack the larger monsters. She sees some of the monsters trying to escape, but she pulls them back and destroys them like a goddess. Nagumo then confronts the leader of the monsters and warns him that he has picked a fight with the wrong guy as he aims his gun at him. The leader tries to escape, but Nagumo shoots him down, captures him, and takes him back to see his teacher. They all realize that he is Shimizu, and they begin to wonder what has made him do such a thing. He tells them that he wants to show them how great he is, and his teacher begins to wonder how mobilizing a demon army will make them see how great he is, which is the stupidest move ever, but at least it matches his dumb face. As they talk, he suddenly grabs the teacher and warns them that he will stab her neck with a poisonous needle if they get closer to him. He demands that Nagumo hand him his weapons, but Nagumo refuses. Instead, she tries to save the teacher, but mistakenly gets attacked and injured. Nagumo ends up killing the boy, and then immediately realizes that his teacher has been poisoned. He pours some of the antidote into his mouth and kisses her so that she can take the medicine.
Oh shit. Here we go again.
He also takes some of the medicine to pour on Shi's wounds in order to heal her. The teacher immediately begs Nagumo to save Shimizu's life despite what he has done, but Nagumo ignores her and instead shoots him twice, telling his teacher that he was an enemy and he doesn't believe in second chances. His teacher starts to cry, and Nagumo leaves. While leaving, Nagumo and the others reflect on everything that has happened, and they tell him that his teacher will still think about what he has done and not feel bad for it. Once Will arrives at Ilwer's place, they exchange greetings. Ilwer expresses surprise, as he thought Will would never make it back alive. Nagumo responds, saying Will was lucky. He tells Ilwer that he needs one more status plate for Tio, which makes her smile, as it signifies she is part of the group. They arrive at their room, and Tio begins to wonder if it is okay for her to get a top-rank status plate. She reassures her, telling her it is totally okay. She remembers the promise Nagumo made to her and asks him about it, but he remains silent and stares out the window. Tio lies on the bed, dreaming about her kingdom and her father's words from her childhood, refusing to wake up. Yu then uses a whip to wake her, reminding her that they need to go shopping and encouraging her to get up so they won't be late. Meanwhile, Nagumo takes Shi on an outing to visit several places in the city as he promised. They come across an aquarium, and Shi expresses her interest in visiting it, to which Nagumo agrees. At the aquarium, Nagumo stares at a talking Giga Chad fish and starts asking it questions, forgetting that he came with Shi and getting lost in conversation with the Giga Chad. After a while, Shi comes back to confront him, and Giga Chad apologizes. He decides to answer one more question from Nagumo. Nagumo asks the Giga Chad what is he doing in an aquarium. Giga Chad explains that he was accidentally pushed up by a current of water, and Nagumo decides to set him free. Giga Chad thanks him and informs them that there are a huge number of slaves in the city and advises them to be very careful, and they bid each other farewell. As they begin to leave, she asks him if he is comfortable with letting Tio join them. He tells her that he likes Tio, but he thinks Tio is a pervert. She assures him that she likes Tio just the way she is, whether she is a pervert or not. Then, Nagumo tells her that he can feel a presence beneath them and senses that the person is weak and needs help. In the meantime, Yu and Tio start talking about Shi and how kind she has been to them, as well as how much she loves everyone and everything. Nagumo and Shi enter the sewer, where they find a woman who has been left alone. Nagumo picks her up, and she recognizes her as being from her tribe. They see that she is very hungry, and she introduces herself to them as Mayu. She helps her bathe and then assists her in getting dry. Nagumo comes in and helps her with her hair.
FBI? Him. Come on in! There he is! Yeah!
They begin to wonder what to do with her. Nagumo then tells them that they will have to take her to the city guard, who will take care of her. However, Mayu begins to cry and insists that she wants to stay with them because she likes them. Nagumo ignores her and drops her off. But not long after, they hear an explosion coming from where they have dropped her. They quickly go to check on her and see that she has been kidnapped. After reading the message on the wall, they become worried, and both plan to save her. Nagumo then begins to find them one after the other, and they start to look for Mayu and save the other children in the city who have been taken. Nagumo eventually finds Mayu, kills the leader of the slave traders, and starts to destroy their hideouts. He then takes her high in the sky so that she can see their hideouts being destroyed. Mayu thanks them, and they notice how cute she is. She calls Nagumo Daddy because he doesn't like being called Big Bro.
I don't like where this is going.
The girls tell Nagumo that they want children and are ready to have them, but he tells them to save the jokes for when they're in front of a mirror.
That one there was a violation. Personally, I wouldn't have it.
They start heading towards an outpost town, and Nagumo becomes increasingly frustrated with the way she is driving her motorcycle and exposing her underwear. He contemplates ramming into her, but she cleverly outmaneuvers him. Upon arriving at the city, Nagumo is troubled by a past incident that occurred there. When Mayu inquires about his well-being, he only mentions that he has been in this city before. Upon arriving in town, the group meets with the guild leader to present a report of their recent adventures and the items they acquired from Ilwer. Suddenly, an adventurer bursts in and urgently informs them that demons have invaded the labyrinth. He pleads with Nagumo to join him, especially since he's known to have survived encounters with demons before. After some hesitation, Nagumo agrees to accompany the adventurer in order to protect his friends from potential harm. Meanwhile, back at the labyrinth, the other adventurers are puzzled as they haven't encountered any monsters or demons despite seeing fresh blood on the floor. As they discuss the mysterious absence of creatures, they suddenly hear a voice coming from a cave. A demon appears and invites one of the heroes to join her, but he refuses. The demon then offers him the chance to join forces with his teammates, but he also declines. She realizes that since everyone has declined to join forces with her, she no longer has any use for them. She will have to allow the monster to kill them. She starts to fight against them, and the adventurers start giving their all to defend themselves and kill the monster. They increase their attacks and notice that the monsters are very strong, which makes them wonder why. They also observe that the monsters are being protected because as they attack them, she continues to heal the monsters. Endo explains to Nagumo how he was able to sneak out in order to seek help. He notices that Mayu has been eating popcorn and immediately shouts at her. Nagumo warns him never to shout at his daughter like that again, and Endo apologizes. Meanwhile, the adventurers in the labyrinth are still fighting for their lives against the monsters. One of the girls attempts to use a shield to protect the other adventurers, but she is ultimately killed by a demon in the labyrinth. The group then starts to retreat upon realizing that the demon is too powerful for them. They begin to consider following the demon's orders to join her, but some of the adventurers refuse as they cannot trust the demon. They continue to battle the demon, and they see that she has killed Captain Meld, which makes Amanagawa very angry. He begins to attack the demon and almost kills her, but then he sees that she has a pendant and immediately stops himself from isekaiing her. Meanwhile, Endo continues to beg Nagumo for help, and Nagumo agrees to go save them in the labyrinth. When he arrives, he stops two monsters from killing two of his friends immediately. They all become surprised at seeing him, and Shizuku becomes speechless. Nagumo immediately starts taking down all of the demon's monsters, leaving her shocked. She asks him how he is able to do all of that, and Nagumo tells her that she is still using low-level magic on him. His other teammates also become surprised at how powerful he has become. He ignores them and continues shooting the monsters.
Who's laughing now?
Nagumo then targets her healer and immediately takes out more of the monsters. She then notices that he has taken out her healer, and he tells her that she is about to take a trip to hell and won't be able to return. His old friends then begin to argue whether he is the one or not. Yu then asks Hiyama if he wants to betray Nagumo again, making him wet his pants. He and his team begin to fight off the remaining monsters, and the demon girl becomes surprised and asks him who he is. He helps his old friend with a very light sword that assists her in killing the serpent that was attacking her. Nagumo then asks her what a demon is doing with monsters and what she is doing in the labyrinth. She refuses to tell him, so Nagumo immediately shoots her in the legs, causing her to fall to the ground and begin bleeding. Despite this, he tells her that he will kill her. In response, she warns him that her lover will come and kill him. Nagumo laughs and confidently declares that he will kill anyone who comes for him, whether they are human or a god. His friends immediately try to stop him from killing her, but as usual, he ignores them and shoots her dead. They talk for a while and then begin to head back. Nagumo starts arguing with the hero about everything that has happened and why he killed her. He tells him that he did so because he was too afraid to when he had the chance. He also tells him that he does not care if they are classmates. He will not hesitate to kill him if he stands in his way. They all become frightened by him and are scared because they see that he has changed into a totally different person from who he used to be. They arrive outside and see a large army waiting for them, which reassures them. Kaori then walks up to him and tells him that she wants to join them on their journey. Yu immediately blocks her and tells her that she doesn't have what it takes, but Kaori confesses her love to Nagumo. Nagumo surprises everyone by telling Kaori that he has feelings for someone else and cannot be with her. She understands and asks to stay by his side regardless. Yu accepts her and sees taking care of Nagumo as a challenge. Kaori then starts asking him about a child and how many girls he has been with. He avoids the questions and leaves, telling her that they are leaving early the next morning and not to be late. The next morning, Kaori bids farewell to her friends. Shizuku permits her to go with Nagumo, realizing how much she loves him. Hurriedly, she runs to him, and he immediately summons a car. After that, he and all his sexy divas get in and get on their way. Although everyone is uncomfortable with how tight the situation is, Tia is turned on by it, which Kaori finds weird. Just then, they all start complaining about how hungry they are, but Nagumo ignores them at first. It's not until Yu confirms that she is hungry too and adds a seductive lick of her lips that Nagumo finally pays attention. This catches the attention of pervy Tia, who wonders why Yu did that. However, Nagumo is determined to find his way home and doesn't mind taking all the girls with him. He promises he will isekai anyone who stands in his way, even if that person is a god. Having made the crazy decision to eliminate anyone who stands in his way, Nagumo continues to be a ruthless psychopath. Meanwhile, back in the kingdom, everyone, including Princess Liliana, waits earnestly for the return of the remaining students, and the report about them reaches the king. Pole Ishtar informs the king about their survival and current preparations to return from the labyrinth. After a while, a report is given that they have arrived at the palace. Without much delay, the princess runs out like a thunderbolt to check on them. The princess, thinking about their ill-fated lives, could not help but worry about them. She flings herself into Shizuku's arms, seeing that they are safe. Shizuku, on the other hand, also expresses her happiness at seeing Lily. While they celebrate their return, the princess tells Shizuku everything that happened while they were away in the labyrinth. She tells her how the other adventurers had been training all day to help them in case danger is reported from the labyrinth. Shizuku is happy about this. Just as Lily inquires about Kaori, she pauses for a while and then tells her that she has decided to stay with Nagumo. Amanagawa seems very sad about this, and Princess Lily notices this. However, Shizuku explains to her that Amanagawa is feeling guilty because Nagumo has saved him once again. While they stare in his direction in pity, Shizuku promises to take care of him. Following this, the princess expresses her happiness for the safety of our dear psychopath. Shizuku then informs her that he cannot return to the palace because he is searching for another way to bring them back to the real world. Nagumo, our badass psychopath, is having a fun time with his chicks and his Brabus, navigating a crazy desert filled with monsters. They try to maneuver the car as Yu and Kaori argue like goats. Kaori keeps calling him Daddy Nagumo, which makes him very uncomfortable, so he tries to tell her to stop. However, she brings up the topic of carrying his baby, which pushes Yu over the edge. Yu reminds her that he is engaged and that she should take her filthy eyes off him. In protest, Kaori says she knows a lot about him, unlike Yu, who has no clue about his life. To win the argument, Yu claims to know what he likes to do in bed. They both grin at each other angrily, while little Mayu separates the shameless adults from fighting. She also scolds them and tells them to calm down. Having settled this, Tio sits her huge watermelons on his head, calling his attention to the monsters ahead. While they approach the monsters, he shoots them crazily and maneuvers the car as though they were in a car race. While this happens, he screams uncomfortably and tells her to get her stupid balloons off his ugly head. It is at this time that Kaori also sticks her mouth into his cucumber. Having finished off the desert monsters, they come across a man lying on the bare floor in the desert, almost lifeless. After asking Shi to look after Mayu in the car, he, along with Kaori, Tio, and Yu, goes to check on the injured man. When they arrive, Kaori sees his bleeding nostrils and tries to heal him, but her effort fails. She realizes that ingested poison is causing his mana to overload, putting pressure on his body. She begins to panic as his organs and veins are sure to rupture if they don't do something. With this, she tries to use another spell, and in no time, he regains consciousness. However, on opening his eyes to see Kaori, the man thinks he has just seen beautiful goddess leading him to heaven until our psychopath kicks his belly, causing him to regain his senses. The man heads into their car and pleads with them to save his kingdom. The citizens of Ankaji are collapsing from fever caused by poison drinking water. The poison leads to mana overload and other dangerous diseases. Although there is a cure, it's tough to find as it's a special mineral called stillstone. Mayu convinces Nagumo to help them as they drive off to Ankaji Kingdom, feeling like a superhero squad. Meanwhile, in the Demon Kingdom, the Demon King's madness is unleashed upon learning about the death of the plot queen, Catalia. He vows to wipe out Nagumo and his stupid chicks. When they arrive in town, Nagumo admires the place, finding it impressive. Meanwhile, Yu has a different opinion, feeling that the town looks quiet and sad. The Prince of Ankaji expresses regret that he didn't have enough time to show them the kingdom at its liveliest. He then takes them to meet his father, who, upon seeing his son's weak state, expresses concern and asks if he has also gotten the disease. Noticing the strangers with his son, he wonders if they are the ones sent to save them from their afflictions. Yu and she quickly work together to create a safe river of drinking water and shelter for the people of Ankaji. After their hard work, Yu falls back exhausted into Nagumo's arms and gives him a passionate kiss to regain her energy. Tio and Mayu watch this beautiful moment, feeling envious of the little rat. Meanwhile, Nagumo notices something with his evil eye. He asks the Duke about the progress of the research team in finding out what caused the pollution. The Duke explains that they have analyzed the water in the oasis and the rivers that flow out of it, as well as the groundwater veins. However, they haven't yet dived to the bottom of the oasis itself. Nagumo wants to know if there are any strange spirits in the oasis itself. However, he is told that there are some spirits placed for security and management. Just as this is said, a monster appears from a distance, but Nagumo takes it down with his weapon in a jiffy. They head back to the town where Kaori is seen healing some sick people. Their king makes some interesting announcements, telling them that the source of the water pollution has been removed and, although it will take some time, their environment will return to normal. He tells them about how Mr. Psychopath and his group have agreed to help them retrieve the Stillstone from the dangerous volcano. They express their happiness as he boosts their morale and tells them to try and endure the hardship until it is over. After this, Kaori is left to take care of Mayu and the sick people while the psychopath goes to the volcano tower with his girls. When they get there, she almost becomes a cooked rabbit, but Tio, who is a dragon, doesn't feel the heat. Rather, she finds it strangely convenient. On getting into the first chamber of the tower, Nagumo lets she fight a crazy fire-covered beast. Then, they go deeper and find a beautiful tunnel full of stillstone. But first, they have to conquer the labyrinth to get it. She starts sweating a lot, so Nagumo says they should rest in an enclosed area. Then, he asks Yu to use her magic to make some ice and help them cool down. They continue into the hot area of the labyrinth. Riding on a strange boat to a different part of the labyrinth, Nagumo remarks that it reminds him of amusement park rides. Then, she spots a tunnel in the distance. Just as they move forward, Nagumo detects a disastrous fall ahead. He quickly tells them to hold on tight as the boat speeds and jolts through the volcano. They can't help but scream in fear as this happens. To prevent them from falling, Yu tries to use some spells to protect their boat. After a struggle, they eventually land in a large pool of lava. They notice an enclosed area in the volcano, and Nagumo guesses that the gems are embedded in the walls. He claims that he can see about 100 gems with his magic eye. While they step back to observe, fiery snakes start erupting from various angles in the volcano. Seeing this as a threat, they get ready to kill all the snakes. Tio tries to earn Nagumo's heart by attempting to kill a lot of them at once. She beats her to it. But they eventually accept Yu as the boss when she cooks 5 at once. After this, she asks Nagumo out on a date in the middle of a burning volcano. He ignores all of them and focuses on wiping out the enemy. Something strange happens when he successfully kills all the snakes. A thunder-like bolt strikes Nagumo from above. Yu starts to cry because their sugar daddy might be dead. Following this incident, the law of gravity is broken for our psychopath as he slowly falls to his death. Yu quickly holds him up with magic. She rushes over to him and gives him some medicine, allowing him to stand but still very weak. Just then, the Demon King, accompanied by his filthy dragons, appears. He approaches the severely injured Nagumo and expresses surprise that he didn't die instantly from the first attack. Nagumo ignores him and then shows his tyrant trait by asking if the demons aren't trained properly, or if he, as their king, does not have any manners or sense. After this, he says he doesn't see any point in introducing himself to someone who's about to become a skeleton. However, he goes ahead and introduces himself as Freyed, the apostle chosen by some strange god to punish humans. In this scenario, Nagumo and his chicks are the scapegoats. He says he's ready to roast them as sacrifices to make his god happy. When Nagumo hears this ridiculous confession, he laughs, signaling that it's showtime. They launch an attack on the idiot, but he quickly blocks it. Then he unleashes his power, but Nagumo also manages to block it. The pressure almost overpowers Nagumo, but his chicks manage to suppress it. In a critical moment that could cost Nagumo his life, Tio decides to transform into her dragon form. Long ago, her father warned her that their dragon race must stay hidden. They had been completely wiped out, and if anyone found out they were still alive, they would be killed instantly. They were believed to have been abandoned by the gods, and since then, Tio has been in hiding. As she unleashes her dragon power, Nagumo uses his limit break to defend himself from Freyd's fierce attack. Despite stumbling, he quickly maneuvers to a safer position. He then defends against more of the enemy's attacks while shooting his gun at Freyd as he approaches the dragon. Before Freyd can think of what to do next, he is knocked off balance. He turns to look at Tio and can't hide the shock on his face when he sees that she's a dragon.
Surprise, motherfucker!
He wonders how she survived when their race was supposed to be completely wiped out. With this, she opens fire on his filthy dragon and sends it staggering backward. Nagumo attacks him from behind, slashing a sword through his back, and then kicks him off the dragon. Tio opens fire on the second dragon, causing it to flee. Nagumo's energy is completely drained as he falls deep into the volcano. However, one of his side chicks quickly carries him on her back as he slowly opens his eyes. Freyd, realizing that Nagumo is well protected, decides to destroy the cornerstone, which would cause the labyrinth to collapse and the volcano to engulf the whole city. To stop this and also send a message to the kingdom, Nagumo tells Tio to fly quickly to give his message to Kaori and Mayu while he tries to survive with Shi and Yu. There's an explosion right after Tio and Freyd flee the labyrinth. Nagumo is left alone in a dangerous place, struggling to survive with his girls. They create a protection barrier for a short while, and then they find a ship that Nagumo built. While they get comfortable in the little ship, danger looms as it begins to malfunction due to the intense stir of the volcano. The two girls hold on to Nagumo helplessly, promising to survive or perish with him. Meanwhile, back at the palace, Lily waits earnestly for Nagumo's return while Shizuku practices using her sword. Hiyama is almost going crazy in some forest because Nagumo survived his betrayal. Tio finally arrives in town, but she's very weak and has lost consciousness. Seeing this, Kaori rushes to her in terror. Tio slowly opens her eyes and reassures Kaori that she's just tired. Kaori wonders why Tio is alone and asks about Nagumo and the others. As Kaori leads Tio to an inn for rest, Tio talks about the situation in the volcano labyrinth and assures her that they'll return safely because she trusts Nagumo without a doubt. Tio also shares that Nagumo sent greetings and special words to her and Mayu, making them blush. Following this, Mayu asks if they will be picking them up at the labyrinth, but Tio says they will meet them on the way to Eraisen. They decide to take Mayu back to her hometown to reunite with her worried mother at Eraisen. Meanwhile, Nagumo regains consciousness after the disastrous ride in the volcano labyrinth. Yu leans over him as there is a flashback of events, such as how they had escaped the labyrinth. Just as Nagumo inquires about Shi, she shows up and sarcastically expresses her displeasure when she sees that they are both having a good time while she is unconscious after giving her blood to save them. Nagumo ignores her and focuses on their surroundings, trying to figure out how they can escape from the labyrinth and reach a boat near Eraisen Island. As they look around, some ugly-looking men with fish-like ears board their boat and demand that they surrender. They accuse him of kidnapping Mayu and question whether he has also kidnapped other girls in his custody. When one of the men tries to attack Shi, Nagumo swiftly pushes him into the river to kiss the fish. Their confrontation is suddenly interrupted by a little fly from above, who happens to be Mayu, who suddenly screams "Daddy" from the sky. Nagumo's heart skips a beat, but he is relieved to see Tio and Kaori flying with her. He goes to catch her from the sky and returns to the boat with her in his arms. After warning her to stop putting her life in danger, he hugs her and says he has forgiven her. They all head to Eraisen Island to reunite her with her mother. When they arrive, they are greeted by the officer in charge of protecting the island. After thoroughly checking them, Nagumo takes the persistent little pest to her mother. On seeing her daughter, Remiya forgets about everyone else and passionately hugs her daughter. However, she notices that her daughter keeps calling someone daddy, even though her father is known to be dead. Meanwhile, the ugly, jobless men who have been pursuing her mother and want her to remarry begin to argue about who Mayu is calling daddy. They realize the truth when Nagumo stoops to pat her head. Following this, Mayu's mother invites him into their house while the men gossip about Nagumo, wondering if he is her new husband. After settling in, Kaori tries to heal Remiya's injured leg. Meanwhile, Nagumo tells her his plan to stay in Arisen for a while. Remiya asks him to be her husband and a real father to her daughter. He quickly declines the husband's part, finding it uncomfortable. However, after much persuasion, he agrees to look after them both and always reaches out to them, even when he is away. Back at the palace, Shizuku is searching for the princess when she unexpectedly runs into teacher Eiko. Eiko looks very tired, but she still finds time to talk to her. Shizuku expresses her happiness about her survival and Nagumo's exploits. Their teacher also seems to be delighted about this, except that she is worried about Nagumo's new creepy attitude. In order to explore the sunken ruins of Melusine, Nagumo and his maidens decide to leave Arisen for a while. Remiya and her daughter bid them farewell. Later that day, on their luxurious ship, they all settle down to have a good bath except Nagumo, who sits outside until sunset. Kaori comes to talk to him, and they have a sweet moment until Yu and the other girls interrupt them. Nagumo ignores them and keeps his eyes fixed on the moon as it is already night. He soon discovers that the item they collected from Orcus can lead them to the ruins. He extends it toward the moon, creating a narrow beam of light that connects the object to the moon. The girls watch in disbelief as the light guides them in the right direction. After a while, they sail their ship into a strange chamber, but it's even more challenging than the volcano labyrinth. They struggle to keep the boat from capsizing. As they fight to regain their balance, a monster suddenly appears behind them, but Nagumo quickly takes care of it with the weapon he built. They soon come across another chamber in a strange place, and Nagumo opens it with Occurs' item. They are now out of the ship due to the turbulence. Following this, small monsters continue to appear. When a specific one shows up, Nagumo tells Kaori to let you handle it. Even though this makes Kaori feel sad and jealous, she tries her best to hide her emotions. Tio notices something strange on the rooftop and uses her magic to break the place, accidentally causing stones to fall on Shi's dumb head. After that, strange rivers start flowing in their direction, so Nagumo carries Yu on his shoulder to keep her from being swallowed up. This makes her embarrassed and shy, but they have no choice since she merely escaped being a dwarf.
Emotional, damn it!
As Nagumo starts complaining that the labyrinth is full of weak monsters, a dangerous big slime appears. At first, she thinks she could easily get rid of it by hitting it on the head continuously. But while doing this, the slime splashes its body on her huge watermelons, causing her to scream due to a burning sensation. Tio, realizing that the monster is much worse than they had thought, tries to heal Shi's contaminated cannons. After creating a barrier and attempting several attacks to defeat the monster, the group realizes that it can regenerate even after being destroyed. They decide to retreat and end up in a dangerous location filled with water and rocks. Just then, Nagumo notices Kaori in danger and quickly moves to save her. They end up separating from the rest of the group. After she wakes up in his arms a few hours later, Kaori asks about the others. Nagumo reassures her that they are safe, and they decide to set out and find the rest of the group. However, they get into some crazy shit on a strange boat. Meanwhile, back at the palace, their sensei is kidnapped. Back with the duo, Kaori tries to please Nagumo, but he finds her efforts irritating. He tells her to go back to the kingdom and stop hurting herself intentionally because he has feelings for you. She feels intimidated and stays silent as they journey deep into a strange, abandoned ancient ship. To learn about the ship's history, he instructs Kaori to brace herself as he is taking her into a crazy vision. Suddenly, they are transported back to the past. On the ship, the king was seen celebrating a festival with his people. However, things suddenly changed when he began to condemn demons among humans and instructed his guards to begin to kill them brutally, right there and then. Seeing all this, Kaori begins to cry because of how badly the guards chop off their heads and bodies. Nagumo takes her out of the vision and comforts her. However, because he is a weirdo, he decides to go deeper into the ship to check out other things that are sure to freak Kaori out. When they reach a room in the ship, a strong wind blows Kaori away from Nagumo's sight like a piece of paper. Following this, a group of soldiers surrounds Nagumo, but he quickly takes them down. After that, he slowly calls out to Kaori, who is now possessed by a strange spirit. The spirit tries to act normal, but Nagumo sees through the trick. She approaches him, pretending to be Kaori, and asks him to comfort her. Nagumo, knowing Kaori to be very shy, points his gun at the idiot and saps her off. She falls to the ground and asks Nagumo if he has lost his mind. She threatens him, saying that harming her will also mean hurting Kaori. However, he insists he doesn't plan to harm her, but he plans to torture her until she can't think straight. Hearing this, and seeing how fierce his face had turned, she manages to squeeze herself out of Kaori's body. Seeing that she is back to normal, Nagumo stoops over Kaori, and the moment she opens her eyes and sees him leaning over her, the retarded girl kisses him softly. This annoys him, but he remains calm. Kaori is clearly emotional after dealing with the demon that threatened her life. This makes her feel very special. He lifts her onto his back, and they teleport to the next dimension. At this point, they've reached the peak of the labyrinth, and it's time to retrieve their special item. They reunite with the others, and Kaori talks about her romantic experiences with their sugar daddy, which annoys Yu, who declares a temporary war on Kaori for trying to snatch her man. Tio and she observe them both as they all laugh and then proceed to retrieve the magical item. As this happens, a tsunami occurs. Nagumo quickly teleports them to safety. However, they are swept into the ocean, where they encounter the huge slime monster again. Yu immediately creates a barrier while it keeps trying to break in. Nagumo asks them to hold it back for 3 minutes while he prepares a self-destructive substance. The Giga Chad, his old fish friend, suddenly shows up, attacking the slime to keep it away for 3 minutes. Nagumo is shocked to see him but also relieved. Together, they destroy the slime with a single explosion. Meanwhile, back at the palace, in addition to Eiko, many more people are being kidnapped. Later that day, Nagumo and his bitch have already returned to the beach in Arisen, and are now sound asleep in Ramia's apartment. The next morning, Mayu wakes Nagumo up with her baby screams. He is still fast asleep and without clothes in bed with Yu. Mayu hops on him and beckons him to wake up for breakfast. At this time, little Mayu notices that Yu is without clothes as well, so she openly asks why both of them are always without clothes. Nagumo tries to explain that she will understand better when she is older. Mayu, who does not seem satisfied with this answer, continues to pester him, and it even gets worse when she sees that his sausage has risen. She calls his attention to it and wonders why she does not equally possess a rod. Nagumo carries her to divert her attention from his dangerous weapon, and explains that she does not have a rod because she is a girl. He prefers her to stay innocent and not get involved with such things, even as an adult. Their discussion is interrupted by Kaori and the others, who call them for breakfast. Kaori can't hide her irritation as she tells Yu to stop being a stupid and get dressed. She also yells at Nagumo, telling him to keep his dirty things away from Mayu. Following this, they all settle down to have breakfast for the day. Nagumo begins to think of how to leave the island without hurting the poor girl and her mother. Mayu interrupts Nagumo's thoughts to ask if everyone wants to play a game without clothes. While they play, Nagumo sits on the shore, lost in thought. Watching Mayu so happy makes him even sadder. Rumia swims toward him and encourages him to do what he needs to do, even if it means parting ways with them. She sincerely appreciates all he has done and doesn't want to hold him back in Arisen. She assures him that Mayu is growing up and will handle it, even though it will be hard for her when he leaves. After this conversation, he promises to tell her about his plan to leave the island later that day. Rumia thanks him and promises to prepare a feast in his honor, calling him darling and standing between his legs. The other girls notice this and start moving towards him like swarms of flies. Mayu plays a trick on Shi, taking her undergarment and running away with it. She manages to cover her cannons with her hands and chases after the little goat until she hands it over to Nagumo, who is definitely having a worse time of his life. Eventually, all the girls take off their plot armor for their sugar daddy, placing their filthy wet things on his head. Later that night, Nagumo delivers the sad news to his dear daughter. She cries for a short but then says she'll come to pick him up when she's older. Nagumo becomes emotional but tries so hard to hide it. Seeing her love, he promises to remain her father and says he'll come back for her. Ramiya also expresses her desire to go with him to his town when he returns from Mayu. They all go to bed for the night, and the next morning, after sharing passionate hugs, they part ways. Meanwhile, something strange happens at the palace. Eiko is kidnapped, and the Demon Empire begins to prepare for war with humankind. At the palace, Shizuku and the other students search for the male students and Captain Meld. Meanwhile, Hiyama fights the guild captain. The captain manages to shield many attacks and fight back, but he sustains a few injuries. Realizing he can't handle the situation, he runs off. Suddenly, a strange god appears in the sky and mutters strange things. Hiyama continues with his evil plans after conquering the captain. The next day, Nagumo and his girls continue their journey to the next labyrinth. However, they soon notice something strange on their way, as some men seem to be harassing people for their belongings. It isn't just mild harassment because they seem to be killing people. Seeing this, Kaori asks Nagumo to help them. In response, he starts driving recklessly and stops to shoot the bad men. It is at this time that Kaori notices the princess. The princess explains the situation in the palace. She says the king is starting to act strange and is now totally against Nagumo. She strongly believes that something is wrong with those staying in the castle, as her father has increased his support of the Holy Church and his worship of the strange god has grown very intense. Lily initially thought her father wanted to strengthen his bond with the church, but then the knights and soldiers in the palace started acting strangely, as if they were suffering from some sort of illness. She also finds the rejection of Nagumo very suspicious, as Eiko's warning has been ignored. It's gotten worse now that even the king sees his daughter as an enemy for opposing his tyranny. It was at the time she had prepared to inform Eiko about the situation that a strange nun from the Divine Mountain came to kidnap her. Realizing that he's the reason she was kidnapped, Nagumo turns the car around and decides to rescue her immediately. Meanwhile, in prison, Eiko is very sad, wondering if anyone will ever come to save her. However, Nagumo shows up just in time to set her free. She is very surprised to see him, so she spills rubbish from her mouth. He bends over her to check if she is under some sort of hallucination, but eventually finds out that she is just overwhelmed by his cucumber that is bent over her small body. He leans back and tells her to join the others while he is distracted by the appearance of some strange supreme being. She introduces herself as Noit and says that she is God's apostle who is sent to remove unneeded pieces from God's board. After making this grand announcement, she spreads her wings wickedly, ready to finish off our psychopath. Following this, Nagumo carries his teacher in his arms and challenges the stupid demon to make another move. In the next moment, the powerful barrier breaks, affecting the innocent girls hiding in a part of the Divine Mountain. As they observe what's happening, she warns them about a large army of demons and monsters gathering in the south area of the capital for war. She also mentions that Freyed and his stupid white dragons have appeared, resulting in the barrier being destroyed. Princess Lily starts to panic and suggests regrouping with Shizuku and the others. However, Yu disagrees and proposes splitting up right there. She wants to confront the demon who is riding the white dragon alone because he hurt Nagumo. So, she flies out the window and heads straight to the outskirts of the kingdom, where she meets Tio. Upon seeing them, Tio expresses guilt for leaving the princess behind. Meanwhile, the demons have already started their invasion. On the other hand, Nagumo calls for Tio to come and take their teacher from his arms as he must face Noit. As soon as Tio leaves, Freyed attacks Yu and Shi. He's declared battle, so Yu and Shi prepare to fight back. Seeing that he and his stupid forces cannot defeat the two girls if they are beside each other, Freyed recommends that they split up. He takes on Yu, and his servant, the man who was betrothed to Catalia, is assigned to deal with the second bit. However, instead of just fighting Shi and shutting her trap, Catalia's supposed fiancé looks at Shi with intense hatred and threatens to tear her apart for killing the love of his life. He keeps blabbering like a parrot, going on and on about how wonderful Catalia's life was before their stupid sugar daddy killed her. She starts feeling annoyed and bored as she tries to make him understand that Catalia died because she chose not to run away, even when Nagumo gave her the chance. She tells him to stop saying bullshit and just get down to business, which is their fight. This makes him see her as heartless and careless for causing the death of his true love. He then orders his goons to attack her, but she swiftly dodges their blows. In response, she unleashes her powerful weapon and hits them both in the face at the same time. This goes on for a short while until two of their sharp needles penetrate her skin. infecting it and slowly turning her into stone. But she manages to activate a fast healing ability, and just when it seems like his inevitable death is postponed, she wraps him up with her weapon and violently hurls him away. With this, he mutters a few curses and dies. Seeing that he is now defeated, she heads off to join Yu, who is still in deep shit with Frayed. However, she's able to block all his attacks and hurt his dragons to some extent, but she's still unable to conquer him. It's at this time that he starts boasting about his powerful turtle, which is able to redirect her magic. When she hears this, she gets very mad and sends it to an early grave. Seeing that she had destroyed his most valuable possession, he quickly unleashes his most powerful attack to finish her off. Surprisingly, it works, and she is sent to her death. However, unknown to him, Yu deliberately orchestrated her own death by piercing herself with his dragon horn in order to reverse the injury. She utters a few reversal spells, and in the next minute, her bleeding stops and is then transferred to Frayed, who begins to bleed crazily. With this, he is told to retreat quickly while they distract Yu. At this point, she shows up to help. Sadly, Yu announces that the dummy has managed to escape. Meanwhile, Nagumo is still dealing with Noint, who has begun to squeeze the words and life out of him. While he still holds on to Eiko, waiting for Tio to arrive, she begins to attack him with several spells, but he is able to block them. However, when she sees that he is truly powerful, and that must be the reason why her god requires him to be destroyed, she starts weakening his magic. Nagumo advises her to face the demons and leave him alone as the kingdom is almost being wiped out. She ignores him and says that her god requires him to die after lamenting and going through pain, saying that this is the best way that he can entertain God. With this, she sends different powerful attacks that break his magic barrier immediately, and he would have died with Eiko if Tio had not shown up at that point in time. She blows Noint away briefly with her dragon fire and quickly leaves with Eiko on her back. Now, Nagumo is left to face Noint all by himself as she is now directly opposite him. While Tio carries Eiko on her back to safety, she immediately stops her and says she feels like a coward for running away from a fight that threatens her students' lives. She convinces Tio to send her back to the battlefront, and surprisingly, Tio agrees. Meanwhile, Noint is doing everything she can to defeat Nagumo. She sends him an attack that he is unable to withstand and also slashes him with her weapon on his left cheek. Seeing that she had succeeded in making him bleed, he stages many more attacks, but she is too powerful and very swift at blocking all the attacks. After much trial, Nagumo gets frustrated when it becomes harder to kill her. However, he decides to re-strategize and sends a powerful attack that makes an impact but also affects him. Following this, he shoots her severely and then gives her one last shot to end the chaos. She closes her eyes slowly and falls to her death. After killing her, he goes to join the others. When he gets to where they are, he sees Tio and Eiko and asks Eiko why she chose to stay instead of running away. Tio tells him that she has decided to help. He does not stress them any further and expresses his happiness at their well-being. Tio then tells him that she is impressed by his teacher's skills, especially because she had saved her from dying and had handled the situation so well. Eiko realizes that she caused more harm than help, as everyone in the church is now dead. Tio, however, shows no remorse, blaming them for their overconfidence and lack of preparation for the attack. Eiko is very upset when she hears this, and she starts to cry. Nagumo quickly goes over to hug and comfort her. As they do this, they notice a strange man appearing in the destroyed area. Seeing this, Nagumo asks his teacher to go with them to find out what is happening. When they reach the site, a magical barrier is lifted, and they feel a strange, powerful magic energy, causing Eiko to fall to the ground and cover her ears. It seems to be magic that can easily control a person's soul. He sees a scroll that Laos, the architect of the Barn Labyrinth, had instructed any adventurer who finds the scroll to destroy the dungeon. However, this can only happen after defeating 2 other labyrinths. He also warns that the adventurer should not trust any god, but must instead overcome something powered by the force of God. When these conditions are met, a guide to the location appears. After saying this, Eiko starts to cry. She asks Nagumo to save the people in the royal palace as they are in great danger. In response, Nagumo says they must regroup with Yu and the others right away. Meanwhile, a few minutes earlier, Shizuku heard a strange sound from outside the palace chambers. She wakes up everyone to stand guard, including Amanagawa. Little did they know, a betrayal is coming. They listen to Arei, who is possessed, and Nia, who tells them that the barrier protecting the church has been broken. Upon hearing this, they team up with the palace knights, but are betrayed by the same person who sent Captain Meld away. Shizuku avoids falling into the trap, but is eventually tricked by Nia, who stabs her heart with a knife. After harming her friends, Eri appears from a distance and laughs mysteriously. Having tied up all her friends, Eri walks up to them to make fun of them, especially Amanagawa, while Nia holds Shizuku. She pins a strange weapon to Amanagawa's neck and goes to torment him, saying that she has finally gotten him. She then locks lips with him and kisses him passionately, and then licks her lips in a very weird manner. After this, she affirms that she had always wanted Amanagawa for herself, and that she only did what was necessary to get her crush to love her unconditionally. This annoys Shizuku, who says that she should have simply confessed her stupid feelings instead of tying everybody up and making them suffer. However, she had decided to go the wicked way because Amanagawa would not have willingly accepted her love. He also would not have agreed to join forces with her because he possesses such a good heart. Eri had decided to forcefully have him to herself. While she rants about her wicked plans, she says she has no intention of letting anyone return to Japan as it will really be hard to hurt them in their hometown. She expresses her desire to rule the kingdom with Amanagawa as her dear lover. At that moment, Shizuku notices that Eri has used necromancy to control the palace knights. She first killed them and then revived them, wiping their memories and awareness so they could do her bidding. She then does the same thing to her friends. After declaring her intentions, Amanagawa pleads with her, but his efforts are in vain. She promises to keep them alive after death so she can use their souls. Then, she turns to face Suzu and thanks her for everything she has done in Japan and in the palace. Shizuku gets irritated and tries to stand upright with her injury. However, Nia, who is still possessed, pins her down again. At this moment, Eri moves in close, offering to end Shizuku's pain and bind her spirit to ensure she kills her friend, Kaori. Despite Amanagawa's pleas, Eri proceeds to kill Shizuku. But as she raises her sword, Kaori suddenly appears with the princess, using her magic to block the attack. Annoyed that her plans are being ruined, Eri tries to attack Kaori but fails. Meanwhile, Iyama, also badly injured and now possessed, pretends to care for Kaori. She goes to hug him, unaware that he is also an enemy. He punches the princess in the stomach and then pierces Kaori's heart with his sword. At this crazy moment, everything pauses for a while as Kaori tries casting another spell, even at the point of death. Seeing that she is not willing to give up, he pierces her heart even deeper, blaming her for choosing Nagumo over him. Amanagawa regains consciousness and screams out loud, saying he will never forgive Eri. Eri tells her puppets to restrain him. However, at this time, Kaori had already healed her injured friends with magic before dying. Shizuku and the others attempt to save themselves, but Eri ends up hurting Amanagawa, making him weak and unable to fight. She starts causing trouble for everyone until a single footstep storms the room. The psychopath makes a grand entrance, demanding to know whatever shit had just happened. After seeing that Hiyama has killed Kaori, Nagumo punches him hard and then hands Kaori over to Tio for treatment. Eri claims it's pointless since Kaori is already dead. She tries to double-cross him and get him killed, but he quickly defends himself and almost kills her when Hiyama tries to stop him. After beating the hell out of him and feeding him to demons, he hands Kaori over to Sensei Eiko and Yu. However, Freyed appears with his stupid battalion of demons. Nagumo wipes them out in an instant and then cheers Shizuku up, telling her to be strong for him. After getting rid of all the possessed knights, he promises to get Kaori treated and entrusts the palace to Shizuku's care while he is away. The next day, the princess writes a report about how Eri planned the palace invasion. Eri shared the same interest with the demons and used her necromancy magic to contact them through Catalia's corpse. In exchange for helping the demons access the capital and murdering the knights and her classmates, she asked to be forcefully married to Amanagawa. The princess also reports that Eri did not murder her classmates all at once because her magic can only be used once at a time. At this moment, the king has been brainwashed and killed by the nun from the Divine Mountain Labyrinth. However, the nun is still missing. Meanwhile, Kaori is still in critical condition and is receiving treatment to revive her with magic. Despite things returning to normal, Eiko weeps as she couldn't protect some of her students. Nagumo comes to console her and apologizes for killing her students, knowing how much she cares about them. However, he commends her for trying to help him and prevent the church from harming the same students. He asks her to continue being their teacher and selfishly requests her to continue bearing their burdens. Back at the palace, they have already resumed their training. Shizuku is training with Aminagawa, but he notices that she is absent-minded and unable to concentrate. This is simply because Nagumo and the others have been gone with her best friend for too long. Aminagawa says he doesn't really trust them, but Shizuku seems to believe that they will return to Kaori one day. Later that day, they notice a group of tiny creatures falling from the sky. Aminagawa tells everyone to stay on alert as they land quite noisily. After the whole atmosphere is clear, Shizuku is so happy to see that it is Nagumo and his friends. However, as she looks around, she can't find Kaori among them. Nagumo assures them that she will arrive soon but warns them that she looks quite different now. Just as he finishes speaking, Kaori comes flying down and hits her dumb head on the floor. Aminagawa tells everyone to stand back as he points his weapon at her and asks her to introduce herself. Since she now carries Noint's body, she explains that she is Kaori and asks for her soul to be repaired and injected into Noint's body to make her stronger. Relieved that her best friend is alive, Shizuku thanks Nagumo and gives Kaori a really tight hug. Aminagawa, seeing all that had happened, confronts Nagumo for not warning them about the strange god sooner. However, Nagumo is quite sure that no one would have believed him, so he explains to Aminagawa, who immediately protests. Aminagawa then tries to convince Nagumo to protect their capital instead of going back to Japan, since he is powerful. However, Nagumo declines and states that Aminagawa always gets himself into trouble by meddling in people's business. Aminagawa keeps ranting, but Nagumo ignores him and goes into the castle. The next day, as they sit down to eat, Yu asks if it's okay to leave the others in the capital without helping. Without hesitation, he says he's fine with it. The other students join him at the breakfast table, and he announces his plan to explore another labyrinth in the capital the next day. When the princess expresses her interest in exploring to gain power, the rest of the students also volunteer to go with Nagumo. Seeing their excitement, Shizuku decides to join them. Suzu also volunteers so she can save Iri from her decision. Nagumo agrees to go with them, seeing them as bait to help him finish his quest quickly. Yu finds this very cute and then decides to feed him from her plate. Seeing this romantic gesture, the other girls get very jealous as they also try to feed him. Tio then remembers to ask him for a reward for helping him so well with his missions. Nagumo sighs and then decides to give her a chance. However, he declines to grant her the reward when she asks him for his sausage as a gift, claiming she enjoyed his rod skills the first time they met. After much pleading, he uses his magic to create a thick, hard rod to eternally satisfy her,
Daddy, chill,
making the stupid, perverted dummy scream for help instead. Later that night, while everyone is asleep, Nagumo talks to Yu about his plans to go back to get Mayu so that they can return to Japan. The next morning, they all prepare to have a great adventure in the labyrinth. Thanks for sticking around till the end, you absolute legend. If you've made it this far, confuse the fake fans by commenting "Rip Nagumo" down below. Also, you'll definitely enjoy the story of Noir, an ugly, stupid loner who was so weak that even a light breeze could beat him. Hoping to level up, he explores a hidden dungeon, slaying monsters and unlocking powerful skills, suddenly becoming strong, with all the girls now wanting a bite of his mini-sized sausage. Until next time, stay awesome, stay AniGeek.